Hi there, this is Solitude Ronan from Solitude Ronan Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review comes from 1959, and it's Shake Hands with the Devil, directed by Michael Anderson, and it's Jimmy Cagney's IRA film. Now, obviously the words James Cagney and IRA probably let out a groan. But this is actually an interesting film. Again, I'm not going to go into the politics too much. This is based on a book from 1933, set in 1921. And again, I'm not an expert on the history of Ireland and Britain. But 1921, there was an Anglo-Irish peace treaty that some of the IRA agreed to and others didn't. That led to a civil war in 1922 to the late 60s. The IRA splintered and then it splintered again and again. I'm not going to go into the history of it. So Michael Anderson did The Dam Busters and Orca and Around the World in 80 Days. It's shot by Erwin Hillier, who also did The Dam Busters, but also did A Canterbury Tale and I Know Where I'm Going for The Archers. This has a ridiculous cast. It's one of those that every second scene you go, holy moly, that person's in it. So we've got James Cagney, Don Murray is the lead. We'll get to him in a bit. The wonderful Dana Winter, the wonderful Glynis Johns, Michael Redgrave is in it, Cyril Cusack, Richard Harris in an early role, Niall McGuinness, Ray McAnally, William Hartnell, the first Doctor Who, Harry Corbett from Steptoe Son even turns up. It is just a ridiculous cast. So like I say, it's set in 1921. The opening scene takes place in a graveyard. Niall McGuinness is a priest and carrying a coffin, and we're introduced to Don Murray's character, who's putting flowers next to his mother's grave. He's an American who's come back to Ireland to bury his mother and to study in the medical college. Then all of a sudden, the British soldiers, the black and tans, I wonder if they inspired the Nazis' uniforms. They come, Niall McGuinness tells everybody to drop the coffin. The coffin's full of guns and they disperse. And one of the group, a woman comes over and asks if she can sit with Don Murray, and basically Don Murray covers for her just by saying she's a family friend when the British officer comes to question Murray and who he is and asks for his identification. And then we cut to Murray on the campus of the college and his roommate Ray McAnally, who heard about, he did a deed for the cause, but Murray's not interested in the cause at this point anyway. And then we're introduced to James Cagney, who is doing an Irish accent. It's one of those things, I don't know whether the film was shot in sequence, but at the start Cagney is doing one of those American actors doing an Irish accent, but then by the end of the film he's either kind of forgotten how to do it or just do it a bit better. But over the course of the film, it's not as grating as the initial scene. It's kind of a balance of what's more or less believable James Cagney as second in charge of an IRA crew, or him being a surgeon and lecturer at a medical college. Yeah. So we're introduced to Cagney, who at this point, spoiler alert, he is just a surgeon and lecturer. McAnally and Murray are out in the town, and they witness somebody throwing a grenade at a van full of British soldiers. That goes up, they get caught in the crossfire, McAnally gets shot, and when they take him, when he ends up in a safe house, and the person there says for them to go get Jimmy Cagney, so he patches him up, and that's how Murray is kind of taken into the underground, where he meets these cast of characters, because obviously for plot reasons he happened to drop one of his books with his name on it, so obviously the Black and Tans are after him and looking for him. So he's in the underground and he's introduced to Michael Redgrave, who is the top. And like lots of leaders, Michael Redgrave doesn't get his hands dirty. It's Jimmy Cagney and his crew that get their hands dirty. And Michael Redgrave, to his credit, doesn't even try to do an Irish accent. He is literally just Michael Redgrave, the English gentleman, which is kind of ironic that he's in charge of the IRA. And Michael Redgrave tries to recruit Don Murray's character by telling him that his father was involved and his father saved Michael Redgrave's life. You know, the typical dramatic story elements. But Don Murray's still convinced he just wants to get out of Ireland, so they arrange a boat for him to go to the coast. And again, these were all shot, the film was shot in Ireland in real locations, which gives it an authenticity. So they go to the coast, and there's a beautiful lighthouse and a nice beach. You know, at one point, there's a scene on the beach where Jimmy Cagney does look like Death from The Seventh Seal. I'm guessing Michael Anderson must have watched some Bergman. But there he meets Cyril Cusack, the wonderful, underrated Cyril Cusack. And we meet Richard Harris, who immediately, you know, this was a small early role for him, but immediately he just jumps off the screen. He plays an absolute heel. He plays an absolute plank in this film. You know, he starts off by needling Don Murray because he's, you know, running away from the fight. He is constantly putting his foot in his mouth, which ends up with people getting killed, and it's his fault. You know, so even although he is kind of the action hero, he's also a bit of a doofus. But he does get a wonderful send off. But you can kind of tell that he's going to be a star, because, you know, other people are just in like corners of the room, and Harris is just doing movie star things rather than just acting things. But he is absolutely wonderful in it, but you can kind of tell he's probably going to be a star. So Cyril Cusack, you've got Jimmy Cagney doing Jimmy Cagney things, you've got Richard Harris, you know, doing Marlon Brando things as far as props and stuff like that. And Cyril Cusack is just, you know, he's a poet and he just gives out philosophy, and he's just an even keel. And Cyril Cusack, like most of his career, he just like calmly acts people off the screen. So we're introduced to this cast of characters. There's other characters, Niall McGuinness, the wonderful Niall McGuinness as well. And then something happens and Don Murray gets involved, even though he still doesn't want to join up, but he essentially gets involved as a favour. There's an old woman, a lady, I can't remember what her name is now, but lady something or other, that she actually helps out, but she gets caught, and she gets put in prison, so they decide, well, we'll take another hostage, so they go after Dana Winter, who's the daughter of a military advisor to the British, and she's in the lighthouse, and again there's obviously sexual attraction between Don Murray and Dana Winter. You also have Glynis Johns, who is the local barmaid that all these guys seem to just use, and she's quite happy using them as well because she doesn't want to get attached. And obviously Don Murray gets attached to her as well. I mean, Don Murray for some reason is like a lady magnet. You've got Richard Harris standing in the background, but Don Murray is the one that the ladies are after. There's a wonderful scene between Glynis Johns and Dana Winter about men fighting and being in war, and kind of how women deal with that. So even though you might groan when you hear James Cagney and IRA, there's actually a lot going on in the film that's actually really well done. Again, I have to talk about the look of the film because it's absolutely stunning. Hillier does an amazing job. It's one of those, if there's a room with an open door, you'll flood that door with light. It looks like an Orson Welles film. It's that good. As far as the shot composition, the shot choices by Anderson, and the lighting is stunning. I mean, there's shots like, there's a shot on the ground between James Cagney's legs, and there's a woman on the ground, and his face is in a mirror in the background. I mean, it's just absolutely exquisite. The shots of somebody being tortured, but we just get a close-up of the British officer's fist with a ring, and the fist just comes into the camera. People fall into the camera. It's such a beautiful looking film. Again, real locations in Ireland. You know, there's a shot where Cyril Cusack's giving a speech, and he's got the sea in the background, and it's kind of dusk. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. It does make, again, I'm not going to go into the politics, but it does make a point of, you know, there's people all over the world involved in fights and wars, and sometimes they become, they're only interested in the fighting. They kind of want it to continue. They're not actually interested in peace. And that's kind of what Cagney's character is about, really. Because we hear kind of from the mid part to the end of the film about, oh, there might be a treaty, there might be a treaty. As history has told, that treaty didn't actually mean peace, it just led to even more problems. And a split in the IRA. But again, it makes points not specific to Ireland, but just about sometimes the people that are fighting, there's an element of them that want to just keep fighting because that's what they're necessarily good at or what they're used to. So to actually go back, peace is almost, you know, a scary alternative to them. They actually want it to continue. Again, that's not saying all, but I think sometimes there's an element of that. And people forget what they're actually fighting for. But again, I'm not going to get into the politics of Ireland specifically, just in general. So it's a film that, yes, you may groan when you hear Jimmy Cagney and IRA, but it's so beautifully shot. the shot compositions are stunningly good. You have all these supporting actors that, let's be honest, are way better than the lead. I mean, Richard Harris is, again, you can tell, but Cyril Cusack is just wonderful. Michael Redgrave does Michael Redgrave things. And Jimmy Cagney, after that kind of first scene of Irishness, he does actually settle down and he's pretty good. Again, he does, Jimmy Cagney intensity. But on the whole, it's a really interesting film. And again, it does have some brutal violence. Things happen to people that you wouldn't necessarily think will happen in your kind of standard film. I mean, it's shot like a noir. There's lots of light and dust and shadow. Like I say, the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. It really pops on this is a Kino Lorber Region A Blu-ray. And like I said, I don't call too many films looking like an Orson Welles film, but this looks like an Orson Welles film. The shot composition is just stunning. And again, I don't know whether Michael Anderson watched a bunch of Bergman, but there's certain scenes that look like Bergman as well. That probably is hyperbole, but it's a really interesting film. Again, if you put the politics to one side, even though it's set in 1921 and there was a treaty in 1921, so that's correct. And it did cause a splinter amongst the IRA, so that's correct as well. Yeah, an interesting film. This Kino Lorber has the trailer and it has an interview with Don Murray, which is kind of interesting. But again, he is kind of the weak link, but it's what films do. Sometimes they bring in an outsider into a situation. I mean, yes, he finds out his father was in the IRA as well. But you could actually have the film without Don Murray. Obviously, you wouldn't have the romance tacked on. But I mean, he doesn't mar the film or anything like that, but he's not the best thing in it, just because there's so much stuff going on around him that's way more interesting. The old woman, the lady, who takes one for the team essentially and ends up in prison and goes on a hunger strike. I mean, she's got a great speech in court, where she says, "Why is there an English judge in an Irish court?" It's just a wonderful little film, but again, let's not talk about the politics and let's just talk about the film. That's Shake Hands with the Devil. No guesses of who the devil's supposed to be. From 1959. So thanks very much for watching this fairly random review. Please let me know if you've seen Shake Hands with the Devil and what you think of it. Cagney was 60 by the time he made this. Just out of interest. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.